Hello everyone, X-Wall-Kill Bethelite here. And there's a guy called, I believe, Jason Roger Pope. And this guy, I think, went by the name also DJ Kid. And he slept with, this is a white guy, that slept with 600 or 700 black women. And he was either HIV positive or had AIDS. Let me repeat this. There's some white guy that was going by the name DJ Kid. I believe his name is Jason Roger Pope. And he slept with 600 to 700 black women. I believe he said that he did it because they were the easiest for him to sleep with. So the concept that there are so many people who are trifling, because that's just to be sleeping with people from the club unprotected, that's just trifling. But for one man to be able to sleep with about 700 people who are trifling. If one man can sleep with 700 of them, how many of them are there in total? How many people are just trifling in total if just one man's sexual experience is to have had 700 of them? There shouldn't be that many people who are that trifling, and you can't say it's a minority thing, because a lot of times when things happen with minorities, I understand that there's a lot of excuses that come along with it, because there is oppression with regards to minorities, but there's no such thing as a type of oppression that makes you not wear a condom. And the guy that was sleeping with them, he's white. So you can't use the oppression or minority excuse, because then what was his excuse? Was the white guy oppressed too? Is that why he was being so trifling? Sleeping with that many people unprotected? And some of these girls, to my knowledge, were young. So young that they shouldn't have been out the house, let alone sleeping with some guy. And he's got pictures of them and posing for these pictures and all that. Like, it's just, there's a certain level of common sense that should come with being a human being. And if these people, which you can't really blame it all on poverty and whatnot, because then what's the white guy's excuse? But if you were to try to blame it on poverty, well, if poverty is the problem, why weren't 700 of these black women in, I think it's Florence, South Carolina, why weren't 700 of them lined up for men with jobs? That would help with the poverty. It'd be better to do that than to line up for some guy at a club because he had drugs or something to that effect. So, I mean, I was having this discussion because I was in shock by the pure numbers. I understand there's people that are ratchet. I didn't fully grasp that in one area, Florence, South Carolina, there's so many people that are ratchet and trifling. There's so many that for one man, there's 700 women that are this way. I mean, that means the number of people total are virtually countless. Probably in the 700,000. I mean, there's probably 7,000 of them. So the point being, I'm having this discussion with a friend of mine over the phone, and he said, well, does that sort of make you happy that you were raised as a Jehovah's Witness? Because in his mind, that kept us separate, or that kept us away from things that are just unexcusably trifling that tends to go with the somewhat of the black culture. It's in the music, it's in the rap music, it's everywhere. Just the unrestrained sex and just pure debauchery. Just pure debauchery it's in the culture and it's accepted to a certain extent. Well, he's asking me, as a black man, am I happy to have been raised Jehovah's Witness, to have kept me away from that sort of activity? Well, my answer to him was that sort of activity is not non-existent in the Kingdom Hall. So being raised a Jehovah's Witness, the concept is, yes, that everybody in that hall is good and everything else. The reality is there is a huge pedophile problem. The reality of it is, I personally know a guy that I grew up around at the hall that left the Kingdom Hall, started, I guess, sleeping around and everything else, contracted a STD, decides at some point he wants to go back to the Kingdom Hall and marry a girl there at the hall. The Kingdom Hall, being raised a Jehovah's Witness, doesn't shelter you from those sorts of things. We're just taught it doesn't exist in the Kingdom Hall when it does. Kids are being molested in the Kingdom Hall. Sexually transmitted diseases are being spread by people in the Kingdom Hall. They come to the hall. It may be worse because they come from the environment where you have one white guy that slept with 700 black women and spread AIDS all. Who knows who gave who what? I'm not sure. AIDS was involved. There's one guy and 700 black women. I know that much. Women and girls, to make it even worse. Those types of people, they come to the hall. They come to the Kingdom Hall. They bring that with them. People in the Kingdom Hall who've been sheltered, they go out pursuing it. I've heard of car groups of guys that leave field service and then they start to hang out. And then at some point, one of them says, hey, you want to try a club? Hey, let's try a strip club. And some of them go. These things happen. Jehovah's Witnesses go to strip clubs. Jehovah's Witnesses molest kids. Jehovah's Witnesses beat their wife. Jehovah's Witnesses have alcohol problems. There isn't this imaginary shelter, so to speak. The only thing that we're sheltered from is the knowledge that it happens in the Kingdom Hall. We're sheltered from the knowledge that this elder done slept with 4 women in the hall. It's not that it doesn't happen and we're separate from it. We just don't know it's happening, and it's not beneficial. Because what was going on in Florence, South Carolina, for a Jehovah's Witness, and maybe even an ex-Jehovah's Witness just coming out, because we were deprived of the knowledge of it. Watchtower didn't want us to know it was going on in the Kingdom Hall, so they just wouldn't talk about it. They'd say that would be a worldly thing. That's just out there. We won't talk about it. It's worldly. When it was happening there in the hall, I know women who are former Jehovah's Witnesses, and a lot of them tell me that elders made passes at them at the hall. And then when they were outside of the hall, they flat out tried to holler at them. These things happen at the Kingdom Hall. The Kingdom Hall is not a shelter away from it. We're just not taught about it. We don't know. So the problem with not knowing, the problem with being raised in an environment where you're not taught about things like that is because you're not armed with the knowledge to know how to protect yourself. You don't go to a club thinking 700 women in this area are all sleeping with one guy who knows how many of them are spreading these diseases. You walk in there thinking maybe 4 or 5 of them might have it as a former JW because you're not raised with that knowledge. But if we were raised with the knowledge, we would know to protect. We would know half the women in here, if not maybe 80% of them in this club. If you had a ratchet club, might have some kind of disease. Or might have some guy waiting outside ready to hit you over the head to take your money. Being raised Jehovah's Witness without the knowledge of those things aren't beneficial because those things still exist. If someone is hiding in your closet ready to rob you, it's better for you to know they're there than to just be deprived of the knowledge. The same thing is going to happen. There are people at the hall with STDs now that probably just don't know they have it. They don't even know to get checked. There's sisters so desperate to get married that guys come from not practicing it, sleeping with who all ever, go to a hall, start commenting, and just marry one of them. Spread whatever he has to them. Same thing happens with the women. They come back from going to the parties and clubs and drinking and having sex with who all ever. They come to the hall. Get married. A lot of them get married. A lot of the people that left and went out and did Lord knows what comes back and they get married. Meaning whatever they have, they didn't spread it to the other person unless it's something that they cured. So for a black person being raised Jehovah's Witness, I would love to get everybody else's opinion on it. Is it better? I wouldn't say. It would be better to have the knowledge and be taught how to maneuver around those things than to just not be taught about it at all. It's worldly. Let's just don't even worry about that. Let's just focus on raising our hands and commenting on the watchtower and knocking on doors. Pretend like these things just don't even exist in the Kingdom Hall. They do. All of those things exist in the Kingdom Hall. There was a girl that was just raped outside in a Kingdom Hall parking lot. There's no separation. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that there's some separation between the world and Watchtower. There's no wall there. There's nothing there preventing any of those things from happening in the Kingdom Hall. These people aren't just naturally all good. It gets so bad sometimes that you see the elders flirting with other women. You see it go on at the hall. So no, I don't think so. I think had I been raised outside of it, I think I would have probably had more freedom. I probably would have had more experiences. I don't think I would have gotten into any more trouble because I would have had more street smarts. I would have more knowledge of what to do, what not to do, versus going out into society just not even knowing certain things exist to even be careful about it. And another thing that doesn't make sense. So I don't think black people being raised in Watchtower makes it better for them rather than not, because of just the craziness that goes on in the culture. Also, it doesn't make sense for black people to be Jehovah's Witnesses because their theology that things are going from bad to worse. Things are getting worse and worse. For African Americans, that's not true. Things were really bad when we were chained up on these slave ships. Things were really bad when people were swinging on these ropes getting hung. Things were really bad when people were walking around with their back just completely scarred up from whiplashes. I have seen too many African Americans. I've not walked past too many African Americans where their whole back is just scarred up from being whipped, and their necks are sore from just big giant chains. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen recently where there's still racism. Trust me, it still happens. I'm black. I see it and experience it, but I haven't had no dogs sicked on me. You know what I mean? Like, not that these things don't happen at all. It's just not as prevalent. So the concept that it's getting from bad to worse for African Americans, the whole theology is not true. It's better for us. It's better. There's no way around that. It doesn't matter if somebody went up and shot up a school. That's bad. And that's bad for society. And for society in general, they may not have experienced anything like that. But we experienced worse. We experienced people getting killed, people getting shot, Klan riding around, burning everybody's stuff up. Emmett Till, the guy, they just thought he did something to a white woman and they beat him unrecognizably and killed him. Like, they were feeding, I guess, black babies to alligators to use them for bait or something like. It's better for us. The whole theology makes no sense for an African American to be a part of that religion. You have to buy into the concept that, oh, it's getting worse and worse now. No, it's better for you. It's getting worse and worse for people that didn't experience what we experienced. But after experiencing slavery, after experiencing the racism afterwards, and the racism that still exists today, but not as blatant, things are better. Nothing has happened, to my knowledge. Comment down below, post down below where I'm wrong, to us that is worse than what was happening then. So for us, that's going in reverse. Things are getting from worse to better. That's the opposite of Watchtower's theology that, well, the end is coming. The end should have came for us then when slavery was here, because it just wasn't going to get no worse than that. Right? That's when the end should have came. So if it didn't come then why would we think it's ever going to come then? It's getting better and better now. All the technology and things that we have now that we didn't have before, it's getting better and better technically for us now. The concept of, another thing for black people that doesn't make sense. This whole concept of things are going to get fixed at the end of the world. We don't have to worry about nothing until the end of the world. When that comes, everything will get fixed. That's not new. This isn't something new Watchtower came up with. They've been teaching black people that Jesus gonna fix it after a while. There's a song, Jesus, he will fix it. Jesus will fix it. You know that Jesus will fix it after a while. Like, they were teaching us that everything's going to be better after a certain point. And that certain point was pretty much the end for us when you're dead or something to that effect. They were teaching us that everything's going to be better at some point further down in the future. They've been teaching us this. This is not new. The concept of, okay, well, everything's going to get better for us and whatnot down the line sometime in the future. This isn't new. Black people walking around, or I should say African American people, walking around with a magazine, knocking on another African American's door saying, wouldn't you like things to be better? He's like, yeah, of course. Well, I have a magazine showing where it'll be better sometime way in the future. We've been getting taught that. This isn't new. Jesus will fix it after a while. Sometime in the future, everything will be better. Another thing, so it doesn't make sense. The theology, particularly for us in our situation, the theology doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Okay. So I'm just supposed to wait until the end of the world, and that's so. And I'm supposed to read these magazines until then. I'm gonna be good reading these magazines until then. That's what we're doing. You know, this makes sense for African Americans. Watchtower doesn't make sense for African Americans. It doesn't. And then the whole thing about not having any charities. Not having anything where you can go and pick up food if you need food. Of all religions, and kingdom halls that are close to the hood tend to have a lot of people. A lot of black people in there. If they around these inner cities and hoods and stuff like that. Of all places for African Americans to flock to, why would we flock somewhere where there isn't an infrastructure of support there? If you're going to spend your money and give money to an organization and be a part of it and go and learn about the Bible, why wouldn't you go somewhere where you can learn about the Bible and help out the community? One thing about oppression, because I don't think oppression excuses that white guy and those 700 black women, that white guy and those 700 black women just being trifling. I don't think oppression excuses that, but oppression does cause financial hardships. You don't have the same opportunities, or if you do have the same opportunities, you apply to the same place. Somebody else might get it simply because they're white. You can see that where you have people that work just as hard. Why does this person get it? Why is the whole structure of this company all white? You know what I mean? There just weren't many black people. None of them came to work. I come to work. I come to work every day. You know what I mean? So, yeah, some of the oppression, a lot of it has to do with financial oppression. And because of that, it makes no sense for African Americans particularly to flock to an organization that flat out isn't going to do anything to help that. They're going to give you magazines to go pass around. They're not giving you food to go pass around. You could pass around some food and sit down and talk about the Bible. What's wrong with that? There's churches that have meals on Sundays. I mean, at least it helps. It doesn't fix everything, but at least it helps. At least try to help. Watchtower is flat out blatantly, we are not going to help anything in the community. I think the whole thing about black people voting Democrat for so long is the concept that there's going to be these programs and all these things that's going to help and these things that's going to benefit the community. So black African Americans being Jehovah's Witnesses makes no sense, because that's an organization that flat out is against all of that. They're not going to be a part of any of it. They're not going to help any of that in the community. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's a group on Facebook, I think it's Loyal Followers of Jehovah's Organization or something like that, mostly all Africans. It's the same concept. I know more of the African American side of it because that's what I am. But from the African perspective, they have the same situations in regards to needing things, food, shelter, hospitals, schools. There's churches that build schools and hospitals and things like that. So why are so many Africans flocking to Watchtower? Of all people that would wake up and just see dirt roads and trash and things like that, some of these African countries, you have a lot of that. Them of all people, why would you pick a church that is not going to do anything to help that? Nothing in a sustained form. Versus a church that's going to build you a whole hospital, build you a school, make it better now. Why can't people make it better now versus whenever the end of the world comes, then we're going to start fixing up the world? Then we're going to start fixing up the earth. You can do it now. You can help now. So comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if a lot of other former Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witness men or women, knew the numbers when it comes to sexually transmitted diseases and HIV and the danger. It's not just some of the people. It's not just a good number of people. There are so many trifling people that there is enough women for one man to have slept with 700 of them. Not that he was having trouble finding trifling women. He slept with 700 of them. And there's photos of them. They're all they're all smiling in the photos, posing in the photos. None of it looks coerced or forced or anything like that. It looks like just people going to the club, then later going to some guy's house and doing whatever. So you tell me, if there are 700 trifling women for one guy, how many trifling women are there in Florence, South Carolina in total? We don't have to, avoid putting any kind of blame on the men. Also, I'm sure there's men too. But with this particular event, this particular situation, we have knowledge that there's one man that had countless, for one guy, 700 women is a lot. And I talked to a guy from there, and he said that people have known about this guy for like 10 years. And he was still able to do it. Like, there should be certain amounts of common sense that just come with being human, as far as using protection and trying to steer away from certain things. So if this doesn't scare you, if you're a former Jehovah's Witness, you out of the cult, now you want to go out and have fun, go out and have fun. But know that some of these trifling women, one man, slept with 700 of them. So whatever this man has, now 700 of them probably have. Just know that when you leave and you want to just go ham and just go crazy and have all kind of fun, have your fun. Do that. But just be knowledgeable. Have the knowledge that there are that many people spreading diseases out there. That there are the sheer numbers are through the roof of people who are just trifling and just ignorant. There's just no excuse for it. There's no excuse. There's nothing about being hood or anything like that you would not know to put a condom on, or make sure that someone else put one on, or something like that. There's no part of the culture that you just wouldn't know that. I mean, there's no excuse for it. It's just that debauchery. They're that debauched. They're that trifling. I don't even know if I'm saying that word right. But, yeah, just be careful while you're out enjoying life, exploring. There are people that have no sense, and there are a lot of them. X-Wall Kill Bethelite, signing out.